The fog descended on the castle like a veil. Everything was shrouded in a silver shroud, the gardens, columns, arches, and the pavement strewn with petals. The wedding night began in silence, and in that same silence it ended. She sat by the window, unbraiding her hair. The room was cold. The candles flickered, as if startled by something invisible. Then they began to go out, one by one, not from a draught, no, as if from the presence of one who didn't want this to be watched. The dress already lay on the floor, white, thin, like a veil of innocence. The shoes, by the bed. The silk of the sheets, unwrinkled. No one had touched, no one had breathed nearby. He entered like a guest, did not look, did not approach. She asked no questions, made not a single movement, only watched, from behind half-closed lashes. He walked through the room and stopped at the mirror, looked at himself, for a long time, as if searching in the reflection not for himself, but for confirmation. Then he adjusted his collar and left. The door did not slam. Only her heart, contracting, let go. She knew. A smart girl, the Duke's daughter, raised in silence and observation. She knew he was not for her. Not in the sense they speak of tenderness or passion. He was completely different. When she was a child, her mother once whispered to her, "Men are different, but the most dangerous are those who don't look at women at all." Then she didn't understand, but now she understood. He left, through the corridor and down the stairs, not to his quarters, not to the chapel, not to the library, but to the western wing. There, where the pages lived, where one of them, a youth with eyes silent as water, was waiting for him. She stood up, approached the window. The fog still hung over the earth. And in this unsteady, icy emptiness, she thought, "This is not humiliation. This is an invitation, just not to me, for now." She did not cry, did not call the servants, did not write to her father. She undressed to her shift, sat at the vanity and began removing hairpins, one by one, slowly, confidently. And then she said aloud, "Then I will enter where I am not, and become that from which they cannot turn away." In the room the last candle went out, and night moved closer. Chapter 2. The Glass Gaze of the Youth. He appeared in the morning as if by chance, in the great hall where breakfast was served. He emerged from the shadow of the stone arch, carrying a silver tray, too gracefully for a servant. There was no haste in his movement, no fear, no awkwardness. He walked as if carrying not wine but music. She noticed him before he noticed her, though rather he pretended not to notice. His gaze slid over her quickly, penetrating, icy, like the touch of a snowflake to the wrist. No admiration, no fear, only a slight bow of the head, and again silence. He was not handsome, or not with ordinary beauty. Slender, with fine features and long fingers, as if created not for labor, but for playing. He had lips, too soft for a man, and a gaze, transparent, but not empty. Something trembled in it, but not weakness, rather knowledge. She looked at him like at a book in a language she once knew, but had long forgotten. Everything was in him, both riddle and answer. He was not simply a page, he was a witness. After breakfast she asked the maid, "Who is he?" The servant was embarrassed, did not answer immediately. "His name is Thibault, from southern Brittany. They say he once served with musicians, but then the master personally took him." "Personally?" she asked. The servant nodded. He allows no others near him, no tailors, no squires, only Thibault. And everything became clear. She remembered how on the first wedding night he looked not at her, but out the window, with what face he left, and where. This was not a departure. This was a return to himself, and beside himself he kept him. Thibault, the youth with musician's hands and skin as if unknowing of sun. He walked lightly, almost soundlessly. But when he entered the hall, the air became different, quiet, wary, too soft to be innocent. And every time when her husband spoke with her, his gaze was distracted, cold, obligatory. But when Thibault appeared nearby, he changed. His voice became alive. His fingers began movement. He touched cufflinks, adjusted cuffs. He came alive. This was not love. This was dependency. Emotional, physical, secret, and inevitable. She felt no jealousy, was not offended, did not retreat into resentment. She felt interest. Who was he? What was in him that wasn't in her? And how to defeat him without destroying? She began to study, not directly, not foolishly, through mirrors, through steps, through smiles and phrases said as if not to her, but said in her presence. He knew that she was watching and did not turn away. He knew that she guessed and was not afraid. Between them began a game. Without words, without gestures, only with eyes. Once, when she walked through the gallery, he stood at the window, alone, looking into the garden, did not turn around. But when she passed by, he said, as if to himself, "You understood everything correctly." She stopped, did not turn to him. "And what should I do with this?" He did not answer, only said, "He breathes when I'm near, but lives only when you look at him," and left. That night she did not sleep. She felt no pain, only clarity. He was not her enemy. He was the key, and keys are not pushed away. They are used to open. Chapter 3. Latin Lessons. In the castle corridors, steps always sounded, but there were special steps, those that don't ring with heels, don't catch with hems, don't smell of perfume. Thibault's steps. He walked like a ghost, and each time passed her door, always at the same time, between the second and third candle of night. At first she thought it was coincidence, then habit. But when on the third week he stopped at her door and remained standing, just standing, not moving, she understood. This was a signal, or a test. The next morning she opened the door 2 fingers wide, no more, not for invitation, for observation. The room filled with cold air, and she herself with tense expectation. Her heart beat not in anxiety, but in anticipation. Not physical, cognitive. She wanted to know how deep all this had gone. He passed as always, quietly, but approaching her door, he slowed. His body turned slightly aside, not toward her, toward where the shadow was. He stood long, then whispered, "Today he read Virgil." She did not answer immediately, then said, "And what did he understand?" Thibault smiled, "Only your eyes," and left. From this evening she began appearing in the library, not for reading, for presence. Her husband came there daily, and each time, with Thibault. They sat by the window, opened volumes, discussed metaphors, rhythm and structure. He read aloud. She listened. At first he pretended she wasn't there, then began nodding to her upon entrance, then leaving one extra bookmark on the edge of the table. He taught Latin with passion, but his eyes always returned to her when Thibault's voice quieted. Once she sat nearby, took a volume of Cicero, read the first line without error. Her husband looked at her as if for the first time. Thibault was silent, but the corner of his lips trembled. "You know Latin?" her husband asked. "I am a duke's daughter," she answered. "We were taught not only to bear children submissively." He smiled. "And what else were you taught?" She closed the book and answered, "To listen while others think you're silent." After this they read as three, sometimes silently, sometimes too closely, sometimes too quietly. She studied them. Who first reached for the book? Who first looked away? Who looked at her when the other couldn't see? In their breathing was music, but not harmony. Rather pauses from which she could compose a melody. Thibault increasingly spoke not only to her husband, but to her as well. His voice was soft but precise. He did not flirt. He did not dominate. He was present, without claims, without proposals, only a gaze that occasionally touched her as if asking, "Are you sure you know what you're getting into?" Once she remained alone with Thibault. Her husband left early. Thibault gathered the books. She did not rise, only said, "Do you like his face?" He lowered his gaze, but was not embarrassed. "I like when he smiles. It happens rarely." "And do you smile?" He answered after a pause, "Only when you come." That evening she understood. She was no longer observing. She was drawn in, but not as a woman expecting love, but as a director already constructing the third act. And in this performance, she would become not the victim, not the rival, but the one who arranges the pieces on the board. Chapter 4. 3 cups on the table. The night was warm with heavy, sweet air in which hung the scent of jasmine and wine. Outside the windows fountains murmured, and somewhere far away a peacock's cry scraped, sharp as broken glass. In the small hall, hidden behind carpets and tapestries, everything was ready for dinner. Only 3. Without servants, without etiquette. She herself insisted on this. The table, round as in ancient legends, on it 3 settings, 3 napkins, 3 cups. She, in a translucent dress the color of ripe pear, with hair gathered at the nape, but with a strand as if accidentally fallen on her shoulder. He, in an embroidered robe the color of dusty rose. Thibault in black, without ornaments, but with a thin silver ring on his middle finger, like a promise that cannot be spoken. They ate silently. Knives slid across plates like blades across silk, wine splashed in goblets. She observed them, not directly, but from the corner of her eye, like an artist studying light on a model's skin. He ate slowly. He was distantly. His gaze slid over the tablecloth pattern, over Thibault's movements. Sometimes it lingered on her, but not as on a wife, as on a person with whom he would have to speak. Later, sometime. Thibault ate silently. But everything in him, back, shoulders, hands, was tension. He felt the trap, but didn't understand its form. When they cleared the meat and served berries with cheese, she stood, slowly, easily, approached the pitcher and poured wine. In the first cup, for him. In the second, for Thibault. In the third, for herself. Then returned to her place, took the cup. Without raising her eyes, she said, "If you won't take me, take us." Silence. The words did not echo, they struck. Her husband froze, holding his goblet. His fingers went white. His gaze, now on her, now on Thibault. He didn't understand immediately, or understood but didn't believe. Thibault dropped his cup. Wine spread across the tablecloth like blood. He tried to apologize, stood up, but she stopped him with a gesture. "No need," she said. It was too sweet anyway. He looked at her with horror, embarrassment, a desire to leave, but did not leave, and she only smiled, easily, as if she had made a move in a chess game to which there was no answer. Her husband spoke not a word. He drank the wine, to the bottom, set down the cup, and said, "I don't understand." She leaned forward, slowly, quietly. "You don't have to understand. You can simply accept." Thibault looked neither at her nor at him. He looked into the cup as into an abyss. She surveyed them with her gaze, like a conductor, musicians before the beginning of a symphony. This was not a challenge, not provocation. This was an invitation to territory where everything would be different, where bodies, not property but instrument, where power is born not from strength but from trust or dependency. They both were silent, and she took the first sip. And in the room, it became hot, too hot to remain in the former role. Chapter 5. A Kiss by Instruction. They did not answer immediately. Not that night, not the next morning. But 3 days later, in the silence of the private library, her husband approached her and said quietly, almost distantly, "I don't know how this should look." She looked at him calmly. "No one knows. That's exactly why I will begin." In the evening they came to her chambers. Not together, separately. First her husband, then Thibault. Thibault, half a step later, as always. They entered the room not as lovers and not as victims. They entered as those who fear not desire, but the mirror in which they would have to look at themselves. The light was dimmed, curtains closed. On the floor, pillows. On the table, only water, 2 glasses, and several slices of figs. Everything else, inside. She stood in the center, without corset, without jewels, without symbols of rank. Only a thin dress, transparent in movement, as if the fabric a continuation of her breathing. "Sit," she said. They sat, silently, on different sides. "We do this not for flesh, but for balance," she continued. "I am not a toy, and you are not a prisoner." She turned to her husband. "All 3 of us are knots, but one of us must hold the structure, and that will be me." She approached her husband, touched his lips, lightly, not in passion, but as if placing a mark. "This is the beginning." Then she approached Thibault. His eyes were wary, but not frightened. She took his hand and placed it on her cheek. "And this is the continuation." They looked at her. She looked through them. "Now you," she said, "only not with hands. First with eyes, then with breath, then with body, without fear, without guilt." Her husband leaned down, touched her shoulder with his lips. Thibault, her neck. She closed her eyes. In her head was not a single unnecessary image, only rhythm, only order. She was the conductor. They, the instruments. Strings that sound only when touched in the right sequence. The warmth from their bodies was different. Her husband, hot, impatient, as if trying to prove his masculinity to himself. Thibault, soft, careful, like one who already knows the price of a mistake. She felt both, but belonged to neither. "Slower," she whispered. "Not there. Stop. First, eyes." She directed them, as if writing music with bodies. She turned one face to face with the other. She allowed the other to hold her fingers. She, a star in the center of orbit. But they, not satellites. They, parts. And when their lips finally met, not with her, but with each other, she did not interfere, did not turn away. Only whispered, "Now you understood." This was not a kiss from passion. This was a kiss by instruction, the one that turns the system upside down. When everything ended, she remained standing, naked but not exposed. Her husband, with drooping shoulders. Thibault, with closed eyes. And she, with a light smile. As if all this had been only the first scene, a preface. She knew. Now both would return. But only she would know why exactly. Chapter 6. A Letter Without Signature. In the morning, in her husband's bedroom, among folded gloves, perfumed handkerchiefs, and Latin manuscripts, a servant finds a letter, folded in quarters, without seal, without name, thin paper with the scent of something warm, moist, and alive. The handwriting, neat, almost musical. The letters seem to pulsate. He opens the letter, thinking it's another note from a maid or elegant impudence from a court poet. But the lines inside, not a game, not refinement. This is confession, roughly wrapped in velvet. I ask not for body, I ask not for recognition. I was already in you, without your permission. You breathed my name when you thought you were silent. You thought you were choosing. But everything was chosen for you, by the one who watched. I was between you, not as judge, but as salt dissolved in blood. I was heat in the neck, tension in the belly, silence that made your fingers tremble. You wanted to know which of us was in charge, and I was the one who held the thread. He rereads this again, and again. His face pales. He closes the letter, then opens it again, as if it would change. He cannot understand who wrote it. The handwriting, without hints, without obvious signs of gender. The style, passionate but not feminine, too sharp, not masculine, too sensual. He thinks, this is Thibault, the one who dared not speak aloud, the one who finally broke. Thibault finds him in the evening, sees the letter on the table, recognizes it, or pretends to recognize it, and thinks, this is from her, the woman who became heir between them, clever, calculating, the one who holds the knot, the one who writes, not confessions, orders disguised as passion. He does not ask, only says, "Did you like it?" Her husband does not answer. Only looks, then takes the letter and burns it in the candle flame, watches long as the paper shrivels, blackens, becomes ash. No one, he says, not a word. That same night she sits in the library, alone, before her a clean sheet. She holds a pen without touching the paper, and smiles. She knows the letter worked. She writes a second, with different words, with the same fire. You don't know who you were in me. You think, master, but you were just echo. I invented you both, and now I'm collecting you back, piece by piece. She's not interested in reaction, not interested in effect. She needs something else, movement, a shift in balance, cracking of the former scheme, so that one would doubt, the second would suffer, and she would remain above suspicion. Letters are not signed, like will itself, because a name is a trap, and she prefers to be a whisper between breaths. Chapter 7. The Nameless Child. Spring in the castle came suddenly, like a forgotten promise. The walls no longer shivered from drafts, and birds finally appeared in the windows. In the air, the scent of pollen, honey, milk, and something new, unknown. She did not show herself for a long time. Her room was closed. They said she was ill, or tired, or simply silent. 9 months after that dinner with 3 cups on the table, the world in the castle changed. First, silence, then muffled steps, then a moan in which was not so much suffering as surrender, final, cruel, necessary. The child was born at night, without cry, without doctors, only with an old midwife and one servant who was then sent away. Both swore to be silent, but silence did not hide the essence. A boy, strong, pale as porcelain, eyes, gray-greenish, strange, like someone who had already left. Hair, neither light nor dark, the color of ash after rain. He resembled neither mother nor official father, but he resembled the one who no longer entered doors, Thibault. He had not been seen since those very days when her belly became noticeable. Someone said, "He left." Someone fell ill. Someone whispered, "Disappeared." And a servant once let slip, "His room remained as it was, but the pillow disappeared." She did not ask anyone about anything, only held the child in her arms, stroked his hair, looked at his forehead, lips, nail lines, not with love, with attention, as if searching for a trace. "He sleeps as if he remembers me," she once said. Her husband came on the third day, looked from afar, silently. His face expressed nothing, neither rejection nor tenderness, only something slow, frozen. "What is his name?" he asked. She answered, "Still without name." He nodded. "That's right. Let him first choose to whom he came," and left. The servants did not know what to call the infant. They simply called him Little Master. He grew silently, stared directly, as if he took no one seriously, not even his mother, not even the nurse. In his eyes was no childhood. Once in the garden, when the boy turned 1 year old, the old gardener said, "He has a gaze like that youth, the one no one remembers, only now this gaze has become harder." She looked at the child and suddenly understood. He was not a reminder. He was an answer to the choice made that night when 3 became one body, an answer that no one dared formulate. He was without name, because a name defines the side, but for now he stood in the center, just as she once stood, and was silent, like those who have not yet chosen whether to be weapon or fate. Chapter 8. A Bed of Solitude. He became different, not immediately. First, increasingly often he remained in solitude, supposedly on business. Then stopped looking into eyes, stopped speaking at table, stopped touching doors as if they were hot. Servants whispered he had lost his taste, not for food, for the world. He still bore his title, still sat in the council hall, but his gaze was like a shadow from a painting hanging on the wrong wall. He disappeared not in body, in voice. Less and less often he spoke names. Less and less often he opened his mouth. More and more often he rose at night and wandered the corridors barefoot. They said he was searching for something. He no longer slept in the shared bedroom, did not call anyone to him, did not demand, did not command, only lay on the bed, on top of the coverlet, dressed, with open eyes, looking at the ceiling, as if waiting for something important to fall from it. She came sometimes, not as a wife, as an observer. She sat at his feet, looked, was silent. Once she touched his hand. He started as if from the touch of a dead bird. She was not offended. simply removed her hand. Sometimes she stroked the pillowcase beside him, slowly, attentively, not his face, not his shoulder, only the fabric, as if in it remained the form of one who once lay there. He did not forbid her, but neither did he speak. Sometimes, when she fell asleep in the chair, he whispered, very quietly, almost soundlessly, words, incomplete, fragments, sometimes names, sometimes sounds. Once she heard, "Don't go, I hear you, I don't see you." She opened her eyes. He looked into emptiness. She did not ask whom he was calling, and he did not explain. That same night, a servant ran through the corridor, pale as a sheet, swore. Near the master's chambers, she heard a voice, male, young, very close, very warm. He said, "I was shadow, and now I am in you." These words flew around the castle. No one repeated them aloud, but all remembered them. He no longer came out to people. Once the council meeting waited for him 2 hours. He did not come. When the valet entered the bedroom, he found him dressed, with a staff, with documents in his hands, but his gaze was glassy. He recognized no one, neither his signature, nor his seal, nor his father's name. He whispered, "I don't know who I am." I remember only how he looked at me, with love I didn't deserve, and then turned to the wall. The next day he renounced his title, signed papers, left for the southern estate, alone. She did not go with him, did not stop him, did not explain to her son, simply remained in the castle and in the chair beside his now empty bed. Every night she continued stroking the pillowcase, not from longing, not from guilt, but because in this fabric remained the imprint of one who was loved silently and left loudly. Chapter 9. Portrait with Cutout Face. It happened by accident, or was supposed to happen by accident. A servant, sorting through old canvases in the closed gallery, stumbled upon a canvas wrapped in cloth and hidden behind a false wall. Dust, centuries old. Scent, oily, musty, almost rotting. He did not unwrap it immediately. Something in this thing repelled, like the smell of the long dead, but his hands themselves removed the cloth. And before his eyes she appeared, she, on a throne, without crown, without mantle, only in white, hair loose, gaze to the side. In her arms, a child, about 3 years old, a boy, with eyes too serious for his age. He did not hold on to his mother, sat on her knees, as if he himself had chosen this place, as if he knew it was important. And nearby, emptiness. More precisely, there had been a figure. The edge of a shoulder was visible, translucent fabric of a sleeve, a fragment of a hand as if touching her back, but the face was cut out, neatly, evenly, like a surgical incision, with an office knife, perhaps, or a thin blade. The whole gaped, was not painted over, not sewn up, simply cut out, with precision and cold determination, and below, at the frame, lay the knife itself, that very one, like a signature. The painting was immediately hidden. The servant swore he told no one, but rumor spread. They said, the portrait showed that very scene they wanted to forget, not scandal, not betrayal. Truth. She learned of this in the evening, said nothing, only ordered them to bring to her chambers an old canvas with an image of saints, and ordered it hung in place of the one that was removed. "This will be instead of an icon," she said. And I learned to pray myself. The boy ran up to her, sat nearby. She stroked his hair as if wanting to find the line, where he ended and the one who was cut out began. "When you grow up," she said, "you won't know who your father is." He was silent. She continued, "This means you won't be anyone's reflection, only yourself." Servants stopped speaking aloud, but in kitchens, in stables, in shaded halls they whispered, "Thibault was in the portrait. No, it cannot be. Then why has no one seen him since?" Once at night, a monk serving at the chapel confessed that he had seen the painting at the moment it was being painted, and that the artist trembled like an autumn leaf. He said, "I didn't know which of the three he feared more." And neither was seen again, neither artist nor monk, and in the room where the cut-out painting hung, only the scent of rose oil remained, the same that was in unsigned letters, in kisses by instruction, in fingers on another's neck. She went there rarely, but each time, passing by the empty place on the wall, she smiled slightly, as if she knew sometimes a cut-out face says more than a whole one. Chapter 10. She Who Entered Alone. History is selective. It remembers kings, wars, reforms, and titles, but forgets those who led not with sword but with gaze, those who did not rule, but were the reason why thrones were changed, doors were closed, letters were burned, and paintings were hidden. Her name did not remain in chronicles. She was not called queen, though she lived in royal chambers. She was not called favorite, though not a single man at court dared say no to her. She was not considered mother of the nation, though her son inherited everything without having an official father. She disappeared from the palace as she entered alone, without retinue, without honors, without tears. Simply one day her chambers were found empty, windows thrown open, sheets removed, letters burned. In the bathroom, dry. On the table, not one ornament. Only one object remained, small, like a whisper, a medallion of dark silver. Inside, an engraved line. Powerful, not she who is loved, but she whose will became their truth. The court was silent, but into servants' eyes crept anxiety, disappearance without trace, worse than death, because the dead are forgiven, but the disappeared are feared. Someone claimed she was seen at the port, in a man's cloak, with short-cut hair, with a boy by the hand. Others swore she went to a monastery in Provence under a false name, where at night one can still hear someone reading Latin and writing lines on paper smelling of incense and salt. And someone said she never went anywhere at all, simply changed skin, name, place, remained near the throne, but now in the role of counsel, shadow, whisper, to which they submit without order. The boy grew up. He spoke little, but always precisely. He never spoke his father's name, but in his intonations was the softness of one and the coldness of the other. He ruled differently, without rage, but with precision. Once in the archive he came upon the cut-out canvas, lingered before it, long looked at the gaping hole, at the thin fingers lying on the woman's shoulder, at the child, himself. He ordered it hung back up, but without signature. "Let it hang, without explanations, that's the whole point," he said. And in Provence, in the monastery, the librarian carefully kept a bundle of letters, without date, without name, but with the same signature. Celle qui n'a jamais quitté la pièce, she who never left the room. Sometimes at sunset, the nuns heard someone humming behind the wall. I entered alone, but they left, in the form in which I invented them. So she remained in history, without name, without title, but in every decision made behind closed doors, in every man who thought he ruled, and in every child born from choice, not love. So her image whispers through the centuries, love is chance, power is construction. I was the one who held the railing while you fell down.